Hey, today I'm talking about Kevin Smith's first 3 films. And the names of those 3 movies are Clerks, Mallrats, and Chasing Amy. First up is Clerks. This is a 1994 film, and if you're somehow unfamiliar, Kevin Smith wrote and directed it and edited it. He filmed it at the actual convenience store where he worked, barely slept while filming it with just a shoestring budget, and cobbled together this surprising hit of a film. And then the basic premise of this film is that it's about a couple of clerks who work at a combination convenience store video rental place in New Jersey, and it's just a day in their life. I had seen bits and pieces of this before. I don't know if I had seen the whole thing before. I definitely knew a lot of the iconic moments for sure, and I wasn't exactly sure how I would even feel going into this movie because Kevin Smith can be more hit or miss for me. But I was honestly blown away by it. I enjoyed this movie so much. There's so much style and personality to it. The characters are really well defined, and even though a lot of people are first-time actors or not even actors, they did a good job of performing, of conveying emotion, which is the main thing you're trying to do with acting. The biggest praise I have for this movie, without a doubt, is definitely the script. It is an incredibly well-written script. In particular, the dialogue is just so spot on. It's very reminiscent of like His Girl Friday with like the speedy back and forth banter, and that only elevates the already good subject matter of what they're talking about, because like it does vary widely what they talk about, from like the most mundane stuff to fun pop culture conversations. The Star Wars conversation is iconic for good reason, to more personal stuff, and that's so great. A small thing that I really liked was there's a scene where they watch transgender porn, and like the joke isn't about they're watching trans porn. The joke's more so just that they're watching porn at work, the absurdity of what they're doing there. And honestly, like their views on trans people were, it's the best of both worlds. Everyone has all the parts. How can this not be the most amazing porn ever? And I'm like, all right, cool. That's so progressive. Good job, movie. It is a little weird, the part where like Dante gets very hung up on the fact how many dicks his girlfriend has sucked over the course of her life. Like he's fine with the number of people that she slept with. Like he actually wished the numbers would have been reversed, that she's slept with a lot of guys and sucked very few dicks. I don't really understand that argument. It seems like such a weird thing for him to get hung up on. It kind of put me off the movie a little bit, but that whole bit ends with a really great joke that I won't spoil, but that was definitely my favorite joke of the movie. It was so funny. I don't really fault the movie too much for that because they don't really spend a whole lot of time on that anyway. This is a really liked, I really enjoyed this movie, but the thing that kind of brought it down within the really liked category is the ending of one of the few through line stories. So this is definitely a very slice of life movie. You just see them do the most random stuff, like Hockey on the Roof. Hockey on the Roof is so much fun. But there is a recurring thing of like Dante has this girlfriend who is a great person, but he's still hung up on his ex, who he was with for so much longer, but she was a much terrible person. The story there was really great, of like the push and pull between like, oh, this one woman is just good, I should really be with her, but also, you know, emotions. I like this one that I've had for a long time. That was great. But how the storyline with the ex ends is so extreme. Firstly, they do set up how it happens. There's this event that happens in the bathroom. I won't spoil it because it is crazy. But what I disliked about that isn't the extremeness of it. It's more so that, so this event then causes the ex to exit the movie. And that felt emotionally unsatisfying to me because it did feel like the right time for her to leave the movie. But I feel like it should have been Dante's actions that caused her to leave the movie. Either for him like fully confessing his feelings or rejecting her, or vice versa, where the ex fully confesses her feelings or rejects him, and that causes this rift or something. But because it was a third party that caused her to exit the movie, it felt like we were missing something. It was, in a sense, an easy way for her to exit the movie instead of confronting all of these emotions that we've been talking about and building up for the last hour and a half. So yeah, that wasn't the best, but that didn't push it down a ton. It's still in my really liked category, which is my highest ranking. I still really enjoyed this film. It's so well written, such great dialogue, such great characters, even really good cinematography. Top to bottom, it was a great film. There are a couple issues with it, but like it's his first film. He had no budget. He did a great job with what he had. So yeah, no, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie and would totally recommend it. It is a pretty sexual movie. They do talk about lots of different sexual stuff. So that's like the only thing I would like caveat with recommending it. Like if you don't want that kind of vibe, I totally understand. It's not graphic though. It's just dialogue. So So yeah, if you think you can handle all the sexual references, yeah, no, totally. Without a doubt, recommend this movie. It's fantastic. Next up is Mallrats. This is a 1995 film, and I don't know if I'd seen all of it before. I definitely knew scenes pretty well, but it's hard to say if I did watch the whole thing back in the day. And it's an interesting experience. The premise is two best friends both get broken up with on the same day and then decide to go to the mall to just vibe out and plot how to get their girlfriends back. There are things that I like within this film. Jason Lee is great. Shannon Doherty is definitely, without a doubt, a standout. The other big thing that I liked was that Jason Lee's character is obsessed with two things: the mall and comic books. And where those two things intersect with this film is that Stan Lee is showing up at his mall, at his comic book shop, and he crazy loves Stan Lee. But he somehow didn't know that his god was going to be at his comic book store in his mall. It's so insane that he somehow just missed this monumental thing. I don't think the movie really explores like the ideas of how it could be that he is just like oblivious to this thing, because like the arguments for his girlfriend breaking up with him is that he is just obsessed with the mall and he is just obsessed with comic books and he's like a know-nothing loser. But like he's kind of even worse than that, because the thing that he should care the most about, meeting his god, he had no idea about. And so that's really fascinating, though again, I don't think it was explored that much. But now I gotta talk about things I didn't like. This is definitely a farce. It's an absurd movie. It's so ridiculous. And those just in general are hard for me to get into, and this is no exception. It's just too much. It really feels like just a live action cartoon, especially like the Jay and Silent Bob stuff. Like the part where he's on the rope trying to pull the thing out. Like that's just so ridiculous. I didn't really care for the characters in general or their problems. I didn't care if they solved their issues. I really truly hated the scene where Michael Rooker had chocolate on his hand. That was so disgusting. I don't think you're really supposed to like the scene, but it was just like, no. It was too much for me. But the part that kills me, and why I'm very fine with where I place this movie in my ranking system, is that the movie starts with the main boy is going to take his girlfriend to Florida and he's going to propose to her there. But their plans get disrupted because prior to this moment, he told this other woman, made a comment about her weight, which sent her on a spiral that led to her accidentally killing herself. And thus his girlfriend is all emotionally distraught about the friend dying, but also that her boyfriend is partially responsible for this. And he has zero remorse for this. Like, he could not care less about this woman dying. He only cares that this is affecting his plans to propose to his girlfriend. And so thus, the girlfriend breaks up with him. Rightfully so. How can you not care that you were partially responsible for the death of another human being? That's messed up. So, where do you think this story ends? Him apologizing? Him learning the error of his ways? No! He did not apologize for his actions. Not only did he not apologize for accidentally killing someone, but also for not showing remorse and not being mindful of his girlfriend's feelings and emotions. They do get back together, but it's just kind of like, you guys just love each other too much. You have to get back together, which does kind of fit the theme of all these people being very young-minded. But it makes me very upset with the movie because, like, that's the one arc you had to do. That's the only thing you had to do, was make him realize the error of his ways and apologize, because that's the reason she broke up with him, so that's the one thing he has to do. And then he just doesn't do it, and they get back together anyway. And it's like, well, this is fucking dumb. So yeah, no, I didn't put this in the didn't like because, again, there were bits and pieces that I liked about it. But man, this was a bit of a struggle for me, especially with that end. So yeah, no, I didn't really care for this movie and I wouldn't recommend it. And lastly is Chasing Amy. This is a 1997 film that's so fascinating. I took a long time to process this movie because it's got so many interesting ideas, but it also has a lot of very clear problematic issues with it as well. Okay, so the premise is that these two comic book writers, one played by Ben Affleck, he meets this woman, he falls in love with her, but it turns out she's a lesbian, and so it's them just kind of dealing with that in the first half. And then in the back half of the film, film, they get into a relationship, and it's him dealing with her sexual history and the hangups he has there. So I'm gonna push the lesbian stuff to the side for a second because that's a whole other thing. I want to start with the back half of the film because that's the core of the film, is how it ends. It's what he gets most hung up on, is the fact that she has had so much more sexual experience than him. So he feels inadequate sexually, and so he gets very in his head about it, and he spirals and he shames and he does all these terrible things because of his own insecurities. And like, I like this discussion. Does your potential partner have to disclose their whole sexual history prior to getting into the relationship? How much should they disclose just like casually without prompt? Or is the only way they should reveal that information is if one party instigates that conversation? So like they're not hiding it if the other person never asked about it. And then in turn, like the conversation of unequal experience, like should one party being more experienced negatively affect your current relationship? I know how I would answer these questions of like, of course not. Like if this person's choosing you, it doesn't matter what they did before, they're choosing you. But I can understand how that could get into someone's mind and to doubt their own abilities of like, oh, they've done so much more and I've done so little, so like how can I ever compare to them? Like that is an interesting idea that's worthy of exploration for sure. And like the main character is such an idiot and handles things so poorly. He also gets hung up on, I would say, the stupidest thing, which I'll spoil. I think it's fine because I had seen this one before and I remembered this bit, and that like the biggest thing he gets hung up on is that she had a threesome once with two men, and he's just like, how could you? And for the most part, she responds to a lot of his dumb questions and dumb ideas spot on. She yells at him the correct way. But with that one, I'm amazed that she never turned it on its head and was like, so should I, the woman, be disgusted in you, the man, if you had ever had a threesome with two women? Because it's the same. You can't argue that it's not the same because it's the same. So that's definitely a missed opportunity there. But I do really like this idea, this concept of sexual history and context of a relationship, even if the main character went about things in all the wrong ways. Okay, now going back to the first half of the movie, I think this is where a lot of the controversy comes from within the discussion of this film, because it is essentially about a straight man convincing a woman that his dick is the one dick that'll make her go back to being straight again, and it does, and that's not how being a lesbian works. It could be argued that she's bisexual and she just doesn't want to admit that she's bisexual, or it's the 90s so people really aren't talking about being bi, it's kind of just the binary of you're either straight or you're gay. It's one of the two. There's no in between. But boiling that section of the film down, it's more so about how her identity is being a lesbian. Like that's her whole, in a sense, worldview. It's her friend group. It's her brand, her writing. It's her outfits. It's her hairstyle. It's her whole persona is lesbian, not just her sexuality. And then along comes someone who challenges her whole identity and how world-shattering that can be. And looking at it from that perspective, that's really fascinating. That's a really interesting idea that's worth exploration. How that one person can challenge your whole worldview. That's so interesting. Going about it with lesbian was definitely the wrong choice, because that's just not how lesbians work. Though I understand where he was coming from at the time. Like Kevin Smith has a gay brother. He's definitely pro-LGBTQ. It's clear just from the writing that he did not go into this movie from a sense of malice at all. Like he definitely codes a number of the male characters as bi, with them potentially being in the closet and not really understanding that they're in the closet. So like he went in this story more so ignorant. Kevin Smith is a straight man. So like if he wanted to tell a story about a lesbian, he needed more input or even just a writing partner who is a lesbian to better tell that story. But I don't think the story he wanted to tell really was about a lesbian. It's just about a person getting their whole identity shattered by this other person. And I think doing that with just a different concept would have worked a lot better and would have had this movie hold up a lot better through the test of time. So yeah, I liked this film. I enjoyed this film. It's in my liked category, which is middle of the road for me, and it's kind of borderline quite liked because I really like the concepts. I just don't think the way in which he explored them was the best. And honestly, if Kevin Smith or someone else wants to take the kernels of the ideas that's in this film and transform them into some new, fuller idea, I think that would be a great idea, to break down those ideas ideas with a more nuanced modern perspective could really turn into something beautiful. Because the ideas brought up here are worth discussion. It's just, you know, it's a straight dude in the 90s writing about a lesbian. He only had his imagination to go off of, and he definitely missed the mark with stuff. And there's definitely some problematic things here, but that doesn't discount this movie. It is a good film with its issues, but I would still say it's worth a watch. Just let alone for the discussion about its concepts and ideas and how he handled LGBTQ issues. So yes, no, I like this film and would totally recommend it. Alrighty, now for today's rankings. First up, we got Clerks sitting at number 73 in the really like section. And then after that, chronologically, is Mallrats sitting at number 184 in the meh section. And then lastly is Chasing Amy sitting at number 133 in the liked section. Pretty much middle of the road. And this is out of a total of 216 old movies so far this year.